But then again, I have other areas in my home where it's more, I would call it a vignette with flowers. So for example, I'll have a very large mirror in my living room, which just helps add to the reflection of, smaller space. And then all around it, I do have sort of different sizes of plants. And then I have a pothos that has the vine just growing around the mirror, but very gently. It's not, you don't walk in and you're like, oh.
Welcome back to the Helpful Gardeners podcast. This week we are joined by a very special guest, our good friend Nancy Adie.
Awesome.
How do we know her? So we actually saw her a few weeks ago at the Calgary Home and Garden
Yep.
Show. She was doing a presentation with herbs, and she's just an all-around great person, great community member as well, is involved in a lot of different projects. And so we wanted to ask her as a sort of like a stylist influencer on the
Yep.
internet, sort of how she's able to do lots of things with plants inside and out.
She brings the thing I love about Nancy, and always have since I spoke to her. I think the first time we spoke was a couple of years ago, and then we spoke again this year. I love her approach. Like how like certain designers, certain people, they're very rigid in their style.
Yeah.
Nancy isn't.
No.
Nancy isn't. She can see a way to work anything. So if you were talking to Nancy and you're like, oh, I want this area like over the top. I want this area to be the definition of extra. Nancy would nail it.
Yeah.
But if you were also like, oh, I want it minimalist, she would know how to do that too.
Yeah. And Nancy's had really great journey so far. She is the creator behind Simply Styled Inspo. She moved from Toronto to Calgary and began her creative journey as a content creator to connect with her new community here in the city, and just took off from there. She's known for approachable DIYs, food creations, everyone's thrifting bestie. I love that that's her title. And she inspires everyone to embrace creativity and to design beautiful spaces, thoughtfully crafted meals, and just like a warmth and connection to everyday life. Overall, all good things and things heading into spring that we're all looking forward to doing. I mean, we touched on so much this episode, didn't we?
Get away from like the abstract, her abilities. But I mean, she spoke about starting with herbs, using herbs, landscaping her backyard, what she does with Christmas, non-traditional uses of flowers and pressed plant materials.
Yes. We
ran the gamut.
We did. We even went as far as talking about a recent project that she did for Valentine's Day to connect with her community. That was like my ultimate favorite. And we also learned the word maximalist.
I'm still not going to drop it. I'm just going to use extra.
I know. It's a jam-packed episode, so we hope that you'll enjoy this.
When we say it like that, actually, sorry to cut you off, just that backwards and forwards, I'm like, how is that one episode?
I know.
Every one of them sounds like its own episode, and yet we got it in.
No. Well, we hope that you enjoy this episode with our good friend Nancy Adie from Simply Styled Inspo. Enjoy. Are you a gardener?
I am a very passionate gardener. You name it, all things plants, herbs, flowers. That's my thing. So yes, a very avid gardener. So I actually initially moved here from Toronto to Calgary, and in both places, I'm a city girl. So I don't have ample space for sort of a giant backyard. As I'd love to have, a beautiful greenhouse, just like you guys have there. But we completely transformed our backyard and turned it into a little mini oasis. So very passionate about gardening.
I love your backyard. I went on the little adventure on your Instagram and saw your backyard. You've got these really beautiful segments, like a nice seating area, and you've done some really cool things for usage on your back fence. It's just fantastic. It's a very in space, a very when you're in the city, it can be a very difficult thing, I think, to sort of take advantage of the space that we do have.
I think small space gardening, like you said, it's challenging, especially when not only is it small space, but you move from somewhere like Toronto to Calgary. The growing climate is different. But there's really nothing more rewarding than nailing a small space garden, because it forces you to really think out. A lot of times when we look at, your traditional backyard, you think two-dimensional. Everything is on that flat plane. When a small space, you have to start thinking about the fence and pergolas and overhangs and stacking pots, and what can you do to maximize that space without it becoming cluttered.
Mhm. How did you like decide what you wanted to do with your space? Because I feel like sometimes we can see all these different options online and from talking to friends. How did you decide to do what you did with your backyard space?
Initially, when I moved in, I was so excited to get started and really didn't have too much of a plan. It was just our first summer here, and I thought I just throw some flowers in that backyard, and the rest will come to me. And so I did. I started with a few different things. I think I planted like a little baby hydrangea and like just some little flowers. We were really just moving in. I knew that wasn't going to be it, and so the way the backyard was laid out, it was just sort of this builder grade cookie cutter space. And actually, I say it's small. It's not like the tiniest, but given again that we're just right in the heart of the city, there was basically like it looked like a little landing strip of grass against the fence, teeny tiny. There was like a mishmash of a walkway, and then it was just all sodded. And so I knew we were going to do something with that space, but basically, it was COVID, and we couldn't really get away too far. I'm a big traveler, so at that time we had just gone up to we had rented a little cottage, and it was actually during that time that we were away. I think we were in Sylvan Lake, and so we're out at night. We're enjoying this fire pit and all these elements of nature. And I thought, you know what? Why can't we just do this in our own backyard? And so that was the inspiration for that. Came back and completely took apart the backyard. And so what we did, and I've gotten so many questions on my social media about the whole project. So we ourselves took out the entire sod, and I recommend a sod cutter for that. We started doing it little by little, and then quickly realized, and actually we had done a similar project back in Toronto years ago. So we rented the sod cutter, removed all the sod. I had a vision for, although yes, I love plants, and that's what we're talking about today, but I also wanted it to be easy maintenance. So for that side of the backyard, we removed the sod and put in pea gravel, like thousands of pounds of pea gravel, teeny tiny bits. Then we got this giant fire pit, and then did a DIY, sort of like a West Elm sectional, covered it with cushions. So that's the seating area that you were referring to. And then, filled it with flowers and plants around that. But as you were talking about creating vertical space, it's really about varying heights and adding interest. And so on the side of the fence, which is where I feel like it is a very forgotten sad area for a lot of people, we did DIY sort of cedar planters. And then also up the fence, and this is probably the most interesting thing I get asked about the garden, is where, aside from my hydrangeas, we can talk about that, but DIY sort of box planters, window boxes, I guess. They just float on the fence. They're the easiest thing. You can actually buy them pre-made. I had help getting my garden together and building all the things. I'm a DIYer as well, but I just painted those out black, and they look so chic against the green and all the ivy that I like to plant and have that trail down the fence.
Oh,
I love that you mentioned a sod cutter though. I've removed so much sod, and there's no easy way to say it. It sucks.
Oh,
A sod cutter is a game changer. What exposure is your backyard? Is it sun? Is it shade? Is it a little bit of sun, more shade?
we're pretty lucky in that we get great sun, but more so later into the afternoon, which is great because living here in Calgary, it's light out in the summer until like I don't know 2 in the morning. I feel like so that's a big change moving from Toronto. I felt like I went from such darkness to all this wonderful sunshine. So yeah, so it's wonderful. During the day, most of us are busy with work and all the things, and so lovely to be able to come home and just enjoy that sunshine from afternoon. Like actually right now we're mid-afternoon and it's super sunny. So but it really was a learning curve for me in terms of Alberta and what could grow here and what couldn't. And I've been learning, and I've actually been, I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised with what I've been able to grow.
It's tough. It is tough, but it's not as bad as people think. They seem to think that there's only 10 viable choices in perennial department, and there's thousands of different varieties and loads of trees and shrubs, big, small, anything you want. So I love that you utilized all of that.
Yeah. I also love that you are not only an outside gardener, but you also do some inside gardening as well. I notice you have some plants in the background and on your Instagram that you do some things with thrifted finds, which is cool. I think a lot of folks can kind of figure out that gardening is like an investment that you have to spend a lot of money to do it. But I saw you just recently made like a spring planter with a thrifted bowl you found at like what like tell me what you did to create that.
I do so many thrift upcycles. As you know, I'm sort of been pegged as like the upcycling queen and the thrifting bestie, which I hold those titles, with such honor. And so, yeah, I do a lot of upcycles with plants and gardening. I definitely adore my indoor gardening and plants. At one point, I was really becoming the ultimate plant lady, and then realized like maybe that was becoming like a little bit out of control. So I've been trying to pare down plant lady action. So yeah, actually two of my recent upcycles. So one I did is just that. I thrifted a silver bowl, a beautiful silver bowl, which you can thrift for just a couple dollars. I added some wooden beads all the way around. In fact, they weren't even wooden beads. They were, I think you use them for the closet, like for to keep the moths away, like mothballs, wooden moth. Yes, here we go. All the secrets are coming out today. And so I spray painted the mothballs, and then I glued them on, and it was sort of like a look-alike anthropology planter that I had seen. And then I just added soil and put in all these spring flowers and made like an arrangement, which is like super easy to do. And then the other one that I have become known for, I don't know if it's a good thing, and I'm going to use a word that I don't know if we're allowed to use here, but I took one of these old builder grade boob lights, and I turned that into a planter and made it into a succulent bowl. And you know what? You go into some of these thrift stores, there's some in particular that basically all they do is have all these leftover light fixtures. And for me, when I go in, I don't see light fixture. I see boob light turn succulent bowl. That's just how my brain works. So, you know what? It works great. Certainly, you have to think about drainage, but there's every kind out there, and usually they do come with a little bit of a like a screw decorative top that you can remove. But I haven't had any issues, or for those in the winter that want to do something on the more artificial level and just throw it on your coffee table and walk away and throw on some rocks. So that's what I do with my indoor plants.
Let me ask you a quick question on that, because that is not my style. I leave the decor aspect to my wife. Most of my plants are growing in absolutely anything. I've got mud. I care about the plant. I don't really care what they're in.
Yeah.
So my brain is different. But when you go thrifting, do you have a plant in mind and you're looking for a home, or do you go thrifting, see something and go, that could be a planter, I'll figure out the plant next?
That's kind of how I do all my thrifting and upcycling, and that's how all my visions come to life. I feel like it's a religious experience, if you will, every time I go in there, which is almost daily, if not for sure weekly. So I go in, and whatever speaks to me, it comes home, and then I turn it into something. So a while back, I went in and I actually found a toothbrush holder. It was white, it had a gold edge. It was beautiful for a toothbrush holder. And I saw it. I was actually thrifting with some friends, and I just like practically screamed in the aisle, and I was like, this is a vase. This would make the most beautiful planter to, either for your for greenery, but I used it as a vase. And so I came home, and sometimes it doesn't always work perfectly, but I'm telling you, it worked amazing. I posted it thinking like no big deal. It went beyond viral. And, if you think about it, it works really well. First of all, there's tons of them at the thrift store. And second of all, like you can add your water. It sort of acts as a flower frog, if you will. So
How long do you spend in a thrift store?
I know everyone thinks I'm there for hours, like they think I just camp out, but I don't. I go in, I try to go in fairly quickly. I will say a lot of people ask to come with me, and I've been thinking about doing some type of like thrift, situation where we all kind of go together and hop on a bus. But I do a little better when I'm on my own, especially I do a lot of thrift work with thrift companies. And so usually I'm there for work, not just for fun. And so I'll go in and I don't like it to be too long because if I go too long, I feel then my creative juices start to diminish and then it doesn't go well. But I do a few things. I do keep a thrift list with me so that I sort of have like a running wish list. I'm sure everyone else does too, but I'm just repeating the obvious. And so I keep my thrift wish list, and usually I'll never find those things, but they're just sort of inspiration for me of things I want to look for. Like, for example, when I was doing that toothbrush holder, that I just found randomly. But then I thought, you know what? I think I could actually use a martini holder as also a vase. So now I'll just kind of put that on the list. But then sometimes I just put like martini holder on my thrift list. And then I go into the thrift store and I'm like, what on earth was I thinking? What is a martini holder for now, Nancy? What is it? So yeah, and then it comes to me.
We hear a lot of people coming into the garden center, and we always wonder what the average time is for somebody looking for plants, kind of like the same thing. It's kind of getting the inspiration of like, where should I put this plant? I like what this plant looks like. Can I take care of it? And like some people end up spending like 45 minutes to an hour in the greenhouse. I feel like I'm almost the same whenever I go thrifting. Like, do you go thrifting?
I'm not a shopper. See, that's the thing is that I lack I don't lack creativity, but for that kind of stuff, I do. Like, I look at something and I go, "Oh, look at that mug." And then I go, I could propagate a plant in that, and that's about as far as. Oh yeah,
Look at this.
that's about as far.
I mean, very chic, very chic. I'm thinking some spray paint. We need to do a little tweaking with this. But idea.
It does have my face on it though, so it's got some.
Oh,
That's why I was so curious how your inspiration comes to you, because like Brandy said, I see people who they come into the store and they're wandering the aisles up and they're picking plants up and they're looking and they're pondering, and I'm looking and I go, oh, you know what I need for that spot? I need an echinacea. I need exactly one. I go in, I get it, I leave, I'm done. And I've got the plant. So I go in with the plant in mind. I don't go in and I'm kind of waiting for the inspiration to hit me.
Maybe we go in together. You bring me the plant, and I will go into the store and find 5 thrift, containers or vessels for that echinacea.
I'm down with that. I'd give that a challenge. I'd go for that and see what we ended up with.
Yeah. Or maybe you go down the aisles and find your 3 to 5 things, and I'll do it, and then we'll come together and kind of just see. I'm sure we'll find some very interesting things too.
Only if you promise not to mock the items I come back with, because I feel I'd come back with 5 items and you'd be like, no.
Maybe that's the challenge. You find 5 unconventional items that could make a vase.
That Nancy then has to
and then
come.
I do something with it, and then I get out my spray paint and
Well, let's talk about some of your favorite ways to find inspiration for your indoor and outdoor spaces. I know you were mentioning that you were up at Sylvan Lake, you got inspired. Is it sort of like, are you more so find your inspiration online, or are you more so finding your inspiration in real life?
Definitely real life. I actually try to stay away from online for myself, and that's only because it's what I do for a living. And so if I'm being inundated with what's out there, it's sort of hard to do your own and be unique. And so I'm spending a lot of my time, whether it's, at the thrift store or going through a garden center and sort of being inspired that way. But for me, I would say a lot of my inspiration comes from travel. I am huge on traveling, and it doesn't matter where, near or far. I just got back from Portugal just a couple of weeks ago. I was in Paris before that. And when we talk about plants and flowers, Portugal, especially the Azores, which are the islands, I was there many years ago. And, they're known for their beautiful hydrangeas, very colorful blues and pinks. And so that actually inspired me. Again, that trip I took many years ago. And now I have a hydrangea garden in Calgary, believe it or not. Although mine are just white. So what I need to work on is color. You guys can help me with that. Everything is white and green. I was thinking of going very wild this summer and maybe a pop of yellow. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm ready, but I might do it. I know, settle down.
You know what though? In gardening, monochromatic is definitely its own theme. I've mentioned it before, definitely to Brandy. Years ago when I was landscaping, there was a house we didn't landscape, and it was a townhouse, a duplex. And one of them, that every single flower, tree, annual, you name it, anything that had color, the color was red. And oh, okay, that's not my style, a little off-putting, but and we were talking about it, and then we found out whatever next season or whenever it was, the two neighbors in the duplex hated each other, and the one
Oh,
on this side hated the color red. So you can also weaponize monochromatic colors, is what I'm saying.
okay, not
That's
my
my
not my
takeaway.
intention, but we have a lot of new neighbors moving in. I don't know. Hopefully they like white
No, I love
better
what you
than
were
this.
talking about though, traveling and getting inspiration. I can't tell you how many times we've talked about travel on the podcast and how, going to different places and seeing what they grow and what they do with plants is just amazing. I know Colin went to Greece and he came, I feel like I asked you how your trip was and you only talked about plants. But it's true,
Of
right?
course.
Like
Yep.
there's going outside and experiencing the real world and all of the plants that are in it, and then you bring those inspirations back. I absolutely love
And
that.
especially when, like, one of my favorite things about Greece, and yeah, you see all the vines and flowers and whatnot, but one of my best memories, I was walking, just exploring an area, and I came across an olive grove, 100% not manicured, long grasses and wildflowers and these olive trees. I was out of the sun because the olive trees provided some shade and it was scorching hot. And I probably spent around an hour and a half. I picked an olive off the tree and ate it. It was disgusting, but I had to do it. And then I got to see it all, and there was such an interesting takeaway from that for me that, a lot of people, oh, you're into horticulture. You must love the botanical gardens. I maintain botanical gardens. I pull weeds. I like to see that the nature and get the inspiration from the gnarled trunks of the olive trees and the colors and whatnot. Still doesn't mean I can do anything with it in the thrift. I enjoy it.
Plants do make us happy,
Yep.
right? Plants bring us a lot of happiness, whether we're seeing them traveling or seeing them at home. And what I really loved was recently on your Instagram, you for Valentine's Day, you went
Oh,
out
nice.
and purchased roses and then handed them out to retirement residents. Can we talk about that? How did that whole experience go over?
Oh, thanks for saying that. So I just, with my platform, I've had such amazing opportunities, and I've really, been through a journey like lots of us. And so I'm all about leaning into gratitude and truly being the most positive, regardless of what the day brings. And so my goal, as of late especially, has been to really give back to the community in any possible way. I work with several different organizations and charities just on sort of my own. And so for Valentine's Day, I thought, well, what else could I do to give back, but in my true community, in my neighborhood? And so I went to my local retirement home and I just said, I'd love to pop by for Valentine's and just bring some roses. I asked how many residents were there, and they said, well, what a lovely thing to do. And so I came in. I had bought a whole giant assortment of red and white roses. I knew that there would be both ladies and gentlemen at the home, and they said, "Yep, please come on in." And so I walked in, and it was just honestly the best experience. I go on Thursdays now as a result because I'm now besties with the group, and so Thursdays I go for coffee chat. And I was just there a couple weeks ago. And the ladies were so excited. They're like, look, Nancy, you made it into the local Gazette. And they're showing me the photos and they're asking to take more photos with me. And I thought, well, I'm trying not to really put this on my social media other than, if it inspires someone else to do similar things. But, a half an hour coffee chat with them brings me so much more than what I can give to them, I'm sure. And just the stories, the wisdom. But, they were telling me after I came and gave out the roses, it was supposed to be this one-time thing. But of course, with me, it's never a one-time thing. And so I just fell in love. And then they were telling me how like the gentleman came up and said, to my friend, I don't know, Greta, that was there. Look, I got a rose. Do you know how long it's been since a young gal, which I'm very grateful to be called a young gal, brought me a rose. And anyways, they were all just like so thrilled with it. Some of the ladies had put the stem of the rose in their mouth and they're dancing, doing the tango. I was like, okay, we're getting out of hand here. And so they were just having a blast. And I thought, wow, it was such a simple thing that really turned into like a much bigger thing in my life. And now, yeah, now I hang out with the gals and the guys Thursdays for coffee.
I love that, Nancy. Let's talk more about how our listeners can incorporate plants into their own spaces, whether that's inside or outside.
If somebody comes up to me and they want to get into plants, let's say they've got no experience, something they've never done, maybe they just moved out, they've got their first place, whatever. And I have some kind of beginner questions, and it'll be your sunshade, what's your exposure? Are you growing indoors? Is it a light area? Are you in a basement? Are you facing north? This kind of thing. And then how much care do you want to give? Is this something that you want to, be polishing the leaves and spraying and watering, or do you want to kind of set it and forget it? And I have kind of these, this rotation of questions that I go through. It lets me understand them, and then I can kind of walk them through the process. So do you have like some hard and fast, rules, for want of a better way of putting it, to get somebody to where they want to be with their plants and their decor?
Yeah. Don't take it too seriously. I've become an herb fanatic. All my traveling, herbs are in Paris and all the yummy, delicious meals that I was having, and in Portugal. And so I came back and I was so inspired. And so I actually was at the Home and Garden Show with you guys as well. And I was crafting with flavor and doing all these DIYs with herbs, but such an easy way. I feel like a rosemary herb plant, like you can't go wrong. Like I don't know how you would kill that. Like that, have it by your in your kitchen on the counter, and something like that where it's practical, and you're seeing it every day, but you're cooking with it. So you're making some chicken. You clip a few rosemary sprigs, before you know it, it's in, it's all the way through your meal. So for me, herbs was a great way to get into gardening. I have an old baker's rack that I have just outside. Again, I don't have a ton of space, but this is sort of like a vertical herb garden. And I love terracotta pots. I'm also obsessed with terracotta pots. And so I just have a variety of them. And I just have all my herbs in there. Sometimes I bring them inside. They're great even all year round. I mean, you can probably tell me better if I'm doing that correctly. And then with the DIY, like I've DIY'd my terracotta pots with like just giving it like an old vintage feel. I've put yogurt on them, and just, yes, there's all kinds of things. I can come back and talk about more crazy ideas. How I'm out in the garden rubbing yogurt. I don't think my neighbors are like, oh, Nancy, your monochromatic flowers it's all white. I think they're more like, she's rubbing yogurt. She's, taking mothballs and like whatever else she's doing. She's playing with this boob light into a gardening like masterpiece. So yeah, I think start small, don't overthink it. I think herbs are a great way. I also think a lot of people are so afraid of succulents, and I've actually had pretty good luck with succulents. I have a growing jade that I do nothing with. I don't pay any attention to it. I almost think sometimes people and then correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of overthink it, like overwater and too much. I'm a busy gal. I'm really never around. My plants are doing just fine. So like, right? Just don't overstress. Certainly give it attention. I like to have my plants on a schedule though. Mondays, I give them a little TLC, and then I forget them the rest of the week.
That's exactly that. The number one way to kill a succulent is care about it too much. People, they go, oh, they must love water, and they're giving them water, and they're putting them in really hot places where they're cooking and they're drowning all at the same time. Most of my succulents, a lot that I have been started from clippings, cuttings. I've got one going in my office now, a string of pearls. I decided to do layered propagation. Down, I put a bowl of coir beneath it, put them on that, mist them, and now I've got two bowls of succulents. And that's what, people kind of need to get over that fear, because I think that's what we talked about this in the new year. And so something I love doing is I love pressing flowers. I have a flower press, and I love cutting flowers and pressing them. And then I press them and I wait and I check them and I go, oh my God, that looks so cool. That looks amazing. And then I do nothing with it because I don't believe that I have the skill to do anything with it. And you're kind of saying, just jump in, give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
This was it.
Yep.
Oh, that's lovely.
Those are all flowers I pressed last year.
And here you're saying you're not into the DIY and the decor. Look at that.
Randy did that.
Oh.
They were all sitting on a piece of paper towel in the podcasts. That's why we'd kill it in a thrift store. I do bring something to the table. I just don't bring the final product.
You know what? That is the perfect segue. Friday, actually, I have a collaboration going out all about pressed flowers. I do work with both Goodwill, Salvation Army, and many other thrift stores. And so I thrifted these just taper candles, just in the, you walk through the aisles and they have the bags that hang by the wall that no one looks at. Like, I live for those bags. So yeah, please no one else go take them. And so I thrifted these taper candles, like pinks and oranges. I'm sure no one would ever look at them. And I brought them home, and it was actually just after Valentine's Day, and I had all these flowers and roses. And I don't really throw out anything. I wouldn't say I'm a pack rat, but I know that everything's going to turn into something else. So I kind of just let the flowers shrivel away. They kind of pressed themselves. They were so dried up. Took them and I used the actual wax. You'll see in my video when it goes out. I used the wax and then I waxed onto the candle and then pressed the flowers. And I had some little baby ferns and just anyways, like here's your inspiration for the day.
This whole time I was thinking, how do we bring plants into the space? But you can also use plants to accent your space in different ways. So like through candles, through pressed flowers. So it's sort of thinking beyond the box of just a plant and using florals to really accent it. That's so smart.
Potpourri. The home show I was talking about how to DIY with herbs. And so I infused them into oils, and also, you could throw them in your bath salts. And actually I made seasoned actual salts to cook with. So yeah, don't get those two mixed up. Don't lose your bath salts in your food. But anyways, the possibilities are endless, and just really think outside the box.
Obviously, you have a flair and an ability and a trained talent for style and decor. Are there any rules people should look at when they're, and I'm going to talk specifically now about houseplants, but are there any rules that people should look at when they're bringing a houseplant in? Like, you don't want to put a tall plant in this kind of area. Like, a lot of homes in Calgary, they've got that big wall, big feature wall, and it's 2 stories high. Should that be more minimalist? Should it have a huge 8-foot ficus in front of it? Are there any design laws that people should be considering when they're looking at styling their home with plants?
Designing a space, it really depends on your style. So if you're more on the maximalist side, obviously you could bring in tons of plants and that would work with your style. That is really not my particular design style. And so I'm more on the minimalistic way of things. And so for me, in that sense, if you're looking for something very aesthetic in that way, I would say to think about creating a focal point. That's a great way to start, whether it's a fiddle or, something that's really going to anchor your space. And that, or now everyone's really into it used to be the fiddle. Now I feel like the fiddle's moved on out. Now it's, the olive tree. But something like that, you picture, a beautiful couch, a lamp, a little side table, and then just have like this plant as the focal point. I think that really speaks for itself versus having too much clutter in that space. But then again, I have other areas in my home where it's more, I would call it a vignette with flowers. So, for example, I'll have a very large mirror in my living room, which just helps add to the reflection of, a smaller space. And then all around it, I do have sort of different sizes of plants. And then I have a pothos that has the vine just growing around the mirror, but very gently. It's not, you don't walk in and you're like, oh, this is the where the plant lady lives. But just for me, again, I'm keeping with a very neutral, minimalistic vibe and aesthetic. And so for me, I want it to be a bit of a retreat and a very relaxing atmosphere. And I think that's what plants do. But at the same time, they really do add like a very organic and calming effect. So I think the idea would be is what feeling are you after, and then work from there. If you're looking for something calming, a large plant that's a focal point. But if you're looking for super warm and cozy, then yeah, bring in all the plants. So depends on your.
Do the seasons ever influence your designs when you're talking plants?
Oh, absolutely. We talk about spring and summer. In the winter, especially here where we live, it's freezing. So you're not getting any of your outdoor plants. And I love to bring in arrangements for the holidays. And so whether it's like all the cedar, and then what I do is, I'll decorate the stairs as you see here with all fresh cedar and greenery. But then I also I buy it fresh, and then I keep a ton of the clippings to the side. And then I just start making arrangements, beautiful vases with cranberries in there. And before you know it, for just a few pennies, you have a lovely arrangement, but you've got that greenery in there.
I kind of feel like what we've established is that it can be very personal. So depending on if you're minimalist, maximalist, and then, not overthinking it too much, is really being attracted to what interests you and what kind of peeks out at you, even if it is monochromatic, right? And if it is pops of color, like Colin's garden is neat. But I think it's just, trying things out and maybe starting small and doing things like herbs that can be very forgiving or can be used in a multifunction purpose, right?
And collaborate.
And seek inspiration from outside, right?
Yeah, because everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. And if we all play together, you end up with a much more successful, I believe. Like I said, if it was up to me, my plants would all just be in whatever the heck they were in. And my wife was like, can we put them in pots? I'm like, you can come and shop at Golden Acre and pick out, I don't care what. And she's picked out pots, and we've got some terracotta and some nice, just plain, understated pots. And then we've got pots that have got a pop of color and bright colored bands on them. I'm happy with that. I don't care. My plants look good. So
you actually brought up this amazing idea that I am going to do at some point over summer, and it was herbs, but you were talking about this teapot planter situation where they're herbs for your tea. I think that's genius. I'm going to do it and give you full credit for that.
Yeah, no, my wife, she's not the plant person, but she loves taking care of the plants, and she loves the color and using the herbs and whatnot. And a number of years ago, I was like, oh, why? She loves making her own tea. And I did lemon balm, chamomile, mint, and lavender. And I had the lavender in the middle, so it's nice and big. And then I put the other herbs around it. And then just jokingly, I called it the teapot, and it worked on levels. And now every year I make her a teapot, and she loves it, and it works. And I just pick those four because she enjoys them. Go with whatever you want, whatever.
Thanks so much, Nancy, for being here today. Where can people find you online?
So you can find me at Simply Styled Inspo, where I just share all things home, obviously DIY, decor, food, but obviously thrifting, can't forget about that, and gardening as well. So yeah, you can find me on all my social channels, particularly Instagram, but yes, everywhere else as well.
Which is so important coming into spring. I feel like our listeners are looking for inspiration right now because we just hit the first day of spring. And so now everybody's mind. So everybody's probably going to be flocking to your Instagram looking for any tips that they can, do for their garden, especially in the Calgary area, right?
Yeah.
As we get going here. So before we go, we just have to do a little bit of a wrap up. I have one more question for you, but We do this segment on the Helpful Gardeners podcast thing once a month where we, Colin and I, go head to head and we talk about a different controversial gardening topic. And next week, we're talking all about HOAs. Have you ever been in an HOA?
Not really. Nothing I would say that super affected me. I think the only rule that's ever really come my way was years back. We lived in a house. I don't even know if this counts, but we weren't allowed to paint our front door for a while. Like some more around paint colors, but nothing specific to plants and gardening in that way.
Were you allowed to paint your neighbor's door? Tell me I can't paint my dog.
That depends if they had an all red garden. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you have a red door.
Yeah, exactly. Tomato red for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some people can have, really strict homeowners associations, and some have a little bit more chill. And so, there's pros and cons to both. I mean, if you like a certain aesthetic and a certain standard, I can see them being very useful. But I mean, if you kind of have something else that you're, other reasons for loving your home, then it can seem a little bit restrictive, right? So that's what we're going to be diving into next week on the podcast. And Colin, you're going to be picking your stance.
I know which stance I want. Come on. Yes, HOA rules are ridiculous and go too far. Now I can argue. I don't even need to research that.
Wraps this up. That wraps us up for this week. If you're listening over on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, thanks so much for being here this week. Join us next week for Garden Court. Go down into the comments section and give us your stance on HOAs, your experiences with HOAs, and any questions that you have about HOAs that we can look into for you. Be sure to check out Nancy's Instagram and follow her, especially heading into spring. You're going to need all the inspiration. And we challenge you to go into a thrift store and see what happens.
Yep.
Right?
And I'm looking forward to collaborating with you this spring, Nancy. I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing some work with herbs and plants.
Yes, and I think I'm going to be seeing you at the core as well, leading into Earth Week. So I will be there visiting with you guys and promoting all things Earth Week.
Some exciting stuff heading into spring. Nancy, thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And see you next week on the podcast, gardeners. Bye.
Bye, everyone.